Jude Bellingham has been fined €40,000 by the German FA for, quotes, unsportsmanlike behaviour relating to the comments he made about the referee Felix Schwer after that defeat. Cast your mind back, Simon. This is what Bellingham said.
He's not even looking at the ball and he's fighting to get it and it hits him. I don't even think he's looking at the ball, but you know, you can look at a lot of the decisions in the game. You know, you give a referee that's, you know, match fixed before the biggest game in Germany. What do you expect? It's frustrating. I know I've not seen it properly, but I definitely think Marco's up there. I don't know what you have to do to be able to get a foul checked. I can understand, yeah, they've checked it, and if it's his hand, okay, but for me, it was looking away, and that one up there, I don't get how you can't check it, but, you know, I'm not a referee. He apparently is, so, yeah.
Now, of course, it all centres on whether or not this man Schwer is fit to officiate after a 6-month ban for match fixing or for being complicit in a match fixing plot back in 2005.
There's a lot more than that, though, isn't there? I mean, we've got a campaign in this country about respect the referee. What part of that sentiment, from top to bottom, from the referee's performance to apparently he's a referee to getting a referee that was involved in match fixing, what do you expect? What part of that do you think embodies a respectful authority?
Well, I mean, where'd you go with it? Bellingham turned 18 on the 29th of June.
Too much to say for himself.
Is youth in any way a defence?
No, too much to say for himself. He's a very articulate, poised, capable young man that's got the world at his feet and a future that's as bright can be. But there is a place and space for players, and it isn't sitting in front of a TV camera espousing the world of their views to that extent. First and foremost, the German FA deemed this man efficient and effective enough to do the job.
Yeah.
And whether that's right or wrong, it is not Jude Bellingham's job to go in front of the cameras. I understand that we want players to express views. Of course I understand it. And of course I understand that, you know, you can't just simply suggest that emotion gets switched on and off. But suggesting if he's old enough to be stuck in front of those cameras by his football club, then he's old enough to be accountable for what he says. And what he said there was, some people might say it's fair comment. I think sometimes in life there are terrible injustices. We all have to get on with them. You don't get to say things of that nature. Some of it's supposition, some of it subjective, some of it objective, some of it slanderous, and most of it disrespectful. Now, with the greatest will in the world, I think the boy, like I just said, has got the world in front of him. That doesn't give him a licence to say what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. If the club want to make a complaint about that referee, leave it to the people that you work for, whose job it is to be able to make sure these things get the light that they're supposed to get the light. Not you as a player. What have you done? You've achieved getting yourself... I suppose you really couldn't care about a €40,000 fine, because with the great scheme of things, it's probably a couple of days' pay. But the point is that you don't... Jim, I don't want it. Not because I want proles and not because I want... There's too much of it. The player's job is to play football, be good at what they do. And I do think there is a place and space for players to operate in a certain... And it's if anything, the manager says these things. And even then, I don't think it's a necessity. Because I think you're bringing the game into disrepute. Because if you put scrutiny on what some of these little Herberts do on a daily basis and suggested what they're doing in training and some of their performances, they wouldn't pass a sniff test in certain aspects.
He's 18,
if
Simon.
He's old
he's
enough
18. And interestingly, the very experienced Lothar Matthäus has backed him. Saying it was heat of the moment.
But then the judgment of the club is
heat
unwise.
Of the moment. They've just lost to Bayern.
But if there's 18, if you're old enough to... I'm not trying to be a
and this guy's where did have form. Whether anybody likes it or not, even though it's been, but it's the pronouncements you made that he's fit to officiate, he has had form.
It's not his gift. It's ill-advised. We can all say what we want, Jim. I can come on here and say what I want. I can say some really extreme views about people, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But you have to be a little bit guarded. If you're going to put a guy up for an interview, then as Dortmund, then you perhaps shouldn't be putting an 18-year-old up. But he should be made aware, and the earlier in his career he's made aware of it, when to speak and when to be silent. There's no gain in this. The gain in this is that he's got himself fined, and for what? It didn't alter the outcome. It didn't alter the result. It didn't alter the competency of the referee. And what you'll say is, and what people will say is, yeah, but it shines a light on maybe this referee never refereeing again. And it's not about me saying, just shut up and play football, because we'll get onto that subject later on in the show, on a different tilt, I suspect. But there is an element of players play, managers manage, owners own, and everybody stick in their lane. And I don't think, to help referees do their job, that it's appropriate for players to step outside that lane and make observations that are beyond the pale. He's gone beyond the suggestion that he's not happy with decisions. He's then dissected and sliced and diced this referee on every aspect, from apparently he's a referee to ultimately, if you give somebody a game, you give somebody once upon a time was a match fixture, what do you expect from them?
I would say you're absolutely bang on, Simon. If this guy's throughout his career had been squeaky clean, but he's not.
But so by definition, we don't live in a redemptive society. You can't, and if you look back on that guy's background, he was involved in match fixing, and he was the whistleblower. He was the one that took it to the authorities and said, look, hang on a second, I was part of something I shouldn't have been part of, and I'm giving you the information so that you're ahead of it. Now, some might say he got in before people found out that he was involved in it. We never know the background, but it isn't Jude Bellingham's gift, who was 2 at the time that this happened, to sit there and say these sort of things. And there's too much of it in players. There's too much of players getting a little bit ahead of themselves and not understanding that they are part of a cog that turns a wheel. They're not the wheel.
Someone said Bellingham was asked a question, he gave an honest answer.
Engage your brain.
Would it be okay if Marco Rose, the Dortmund coach, said it?
No, it's not an honest answer. It's an opinion. It's an opinion from a player to say, apparently he's a referee. That's not an answer to a question. That's an opinion based upon a supposition and based upon a deep-seated disrespect. Now, that may well be earned for the referee, and it may well be, but I just don't believe it's right for young players and players full stop. Otherwise, you've got the lunatics running in the asylum, and where do you draw the line? Where does it get to the point when they say something which is so unacceptable that you need to deal with it? Why don't you just stop it early and say, that's not appropriate?
I get
it's
all
not
that,
appropriate.
but in this instance, because they're not
and he doesn't strike me as the sort of boy that's like that, as a matter of course, by the way.
He's 18. He's a kid. He was put in the spot by his club to do his media duties. Are the authorities here not using a sledgehammer to crack a nut?
Well, what's the alternative? The player's the one that said it, right? I mean, I'm sure the player would be happy if the club are fined. Right? I can say what I want, the club pays for it, right? You said it. I don't suppose the club expects him to say that. You have to question the thinking behind putting an 18-year-old, and I do believe that this boy is cut from a very decent cloth. I've seen videos of him engaging with the Dortmund fans where he goes over and hands his shirt to a handicapped supporter.
Absolutely. I
can see the cut of this, but this needs to be called for what it is. It's bad judgment from the club, it's bad behaviour from Jude, and it needed to have some sort of consequence, and we move on from it.
Would you have much of an issue if Marco Rose, the manager, had said it, as opposed to Bellingham?
I think the manager, if a manager said that, I'd have to question their thinking and the logic behind what they were trying to achieve, because he's gone to a level beyond the level. He's got, rather than say there was some really bad, I'm frustrated with some of these calls, he's really gone for it and talked about the credibility, competency of this referee. He's talked about the person's character. He's talked about his previous history, and all of those things are not necessarily up for grabs in that interview. He's chosen to do it. I would suspect an older man might be a bit wiser. And if my manager was running, I remember reading a report that Neil Warnock wanted to write to, and he'll laugh, but wanted to write to the FA about a particular referee's performance. And Neil's allegation was that the referee was on drugs and had eyes like a 52 Buick and was affected by a whole raft of things. And I'm like, well, we can't write that, Neil, because that's not going to help anybody. We can all say what we want, but it doesn't mean it's right to say it, does it?
Our listener, Matthew Gould, has done you.
As he said,
Jim, I can't believe Simon's being so woke over Bellingham's comments.
I'm not being woke. I think you have to have order. If you haven't got order, you've got anarchy. If he gets up, we'll all get up. There'll be anarchy. You cannot have, and you cannot do what you want. You've got footballers running around in the summer sending out tweets about how wonderful the world is and everyone should observe curfews and observe lockdowns whilst doing what they want to do. It does have to be an element of a little bit of responsibility in what you say. An 18-year-old shouldn't have been in front of the cameras to do that, and shouldn't have said what he said.
Yeah, I know. But with that referee, mud sticks, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yeah. And that's the tragedy of life, isn't it? Something you did in the past gets brought up in the present, and you lose your job and you suffer over it, and the world turns on a dreadful little cycle right now.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.